Mrs. Ali's turn. You're all right? Okay. If everybody could just, let's do a brief sound check. So if everyone would hold up their microphones.
Testing, 1, 2,
Hello,
3.
testing.
Oh, that sounds good.
Testing.
Hello, everybody.
Just hold it a little bit closer to your mouth. Mrs. Ali, hold it a
your
little
mouth.
closer to your mouth.
Closer to my mouth. Okay.
Yes.
The hard
Perfect.
part will be hearing you.
That's it. Chef?
Okay.
Hello.
Oh, that sounds great too. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Diana Ingram, and I'm the executive director here at Hill Center at the Old Naval Hospital. And I see a lot of familiar faces, but I'm curious, is there anyone who has never been in the building before? Well, welcome. Come back. Please check out all the fabulous things happening, including a bang-up concert. The DuPont Brass is coming to Hill Center, so be sure to check that out on our website. Take a moment, please, to turn off your mobile devices. We are streaming this, so hello to all of our friends out in Facebook Live land. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to this fabulous event featuring Ben's Chili Bowl co-founder and DC Matriarch, Virginia Ali, in conversation with moderator chef Jerome Grant and Ben's official historian, Dr. Bernard Demczuk. Our panelists will be in conversation, and then you will have an opportunity, if you haven't already, to buy the official history of Ben's Chili Bowl, Breaking Barriers with Chili. To introduce our distinguished panel, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Sharita Jacobs-Thompson. She is a professor in the Social Studies Department at Prince George's Community College, where she teaches courses in United States and African American history. She is also an independent scholar and consultant in the Washington, D.C. area and provides training to police departments across the country. She teaches a course titled The History of Policing in African American Communities, and that includes a curated tour of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and conducts implicit bias training and facilitates conversations around topics such as social and racial equity and structural and institutional racism. So this is a superstar in our midst, and we are very proud that she is the co-producer and resident scholar for the Benjamin Drummond Emancipation Day celebration here at Hill Center. And this panel is an important part of that celebration this year. Dr. Thompson's research focuses on Black Marylanders and their experiences during the American Civil War and Reconstruction era. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Thompson.
I wasn't expecting that, but thank you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Benjamin Drummond Emancipation Day program. My name is Sharita Jacobs-Thompson, and along with my partner in planning, Mary Ann Brownlow, we welcome you tonight to tonight's program, Ben's Chili Bowl, co-founder and DC Matriarch, Miss Virginia Ali, in conversation with Chef Jerome Grant and Ben's official historian, Dr. Bernard Demczuk. Now I'm going to give brief bios, and then I'm going to get out of the way because I'm looking forward to the conversation. So Virginia Ali was born in rural Virginia in 1933, moved to Washington, D.C. in 1952, and married Howard University student Ben Ali in 1958, opening Ben's Chili Bowl that same year. You were busy that year. So the eatery served chili dogs, half-smokes, and chili to locals and national civil rights leaders. Mrs. Ali's moral and ethical values, respecting everyone, and perseverance led to this iconic eatery being admired worldwide today. At 90 years young, she still comes to work every day wearing her beautiful pearls and is the most photographed woman in D.C., known affectionately as Mom or Mrs. Ben or Mrs. Ali. Mrs. Ali has touched the lives of everyone she has encountered. She is lionized as the matriarch of U Street and the matriarch of D.C., and countless residents still call her Mom. So please welcome Mrs. Ali this evening. Then we have historian Dr. Bernard Demczuk, who is a 40-year-plus DC resident living in the historic Shaw community. He's the author of this just-released memoir, Breaking Barriers with Chile, Virginia Ali, the Matriarch of DC. He's active in community and corporate, academic, and labor government relations. Bernard retired from DC government in 1998 and again in 2017 from George Washington University after 19 years of service as a vice president and a professor. He's a former chairman of Ben's Chili Bowl Foundation, and he lectures widely on Black history and culture, labor history, community relations, and governmental policies, and also the work that I do with law enforcement. He's my partner in planning that. So please welcome Dr. Demczuk. And last but certainly not least, our moderator this evening is 3-time James Beard nominee, Chef Jerome Grant. He is most notable for his tenure as the inaugural chef of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, Sweet Home Cafe, and the National Museum of American Indians, Mitsitam? Mitsitam.
Yep.
Cafe. Mahal Afro-Filipino Barbecue is his latest concept. Chef Jerome was named one of the 16 Black chefs changing food in America by the New York Times in 2019, and nominated for the Best Chef Mid-Atlantic 2019, and Best American Cookbook 2019, and Best New Restaurant 2017 by the James Beard Foundation. So please help us welcome our moderator.
Thank you.
Enjoy the program, everybody.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for having me. Please bear with me. This is the first time that I've actually had the pleasure to be on this side of the microphone. Normally you get the questions fired at you and you kind of go from there. But first and foremost, I'd like to say my piece about Ben's Chili Bowl. Ben's Chili Bowl is, and will always be a very iconic space to me. Growing up as a Maryland kid in this area, I lived somewhat a sheltered life. My father retired at Andrews Air Force Base, and at that time we moved around in various parts of America, and it was always about great food that was always around us. We lived in upstate New York. There were some of the greatest apples that you get in the orchards, some of the best maple syrup that's pressed nearby in Vermont. You go to Altus, Oklahoma, things, Native American food out there, Navajo tacos, like all those great things I was always around. And then we moved to DC. Before anything that I heard about DC, before I heard about there's this big circle that drives around it called the Beltway, and you'll get lost on it, trust me, was Ben's Chili Bowl. And it was the history of it. It was described to me as a restaurant that overlooked the street, not a restaurant on the street. That was one of the most powerful things that I've heard. And at that time, I was probably around like 12 years old, just understanding like this is the place I have to go see. Because it was more than just a meal, right? It was a bigger piece of this community. It held the community down. So, I tell this story. I remember getting my license when I was 16 years old. And like I said, I grew up in a military family. We briefly talked about how I grew up, made the beds in the morning, no sir, yes sir, type of thing. And, it was always a thrill to not listen to what my dad would tell me. Just, So we drive out to U Street. U Street in the 90s was a very, very amazing and unique place. There was all sorts of walks of life. There was a big Jamaican community, a big Ethiopian community at that time. Like everywhere was loud, everywhere was cultured. The smells, the flavors were just totally amazing. Like it was in the 90s, U Street was just this very cultural blender of just, you'd see goats walking down the street on U Street. Like it was just the wildest thing, And then there was this place, Ben's Chili Bowl. Folks started off their day there. Folks hung out there. You could see it was a thing that stuck out on that block. And I remember we'd drive down and we'd sneak out to go sit down and hang out. We'd grab our half smokes, chili and cheese. I was a little weird, so I'd put mustard on it. But we'd just hang out because that's where we learned about DC. That's where I learned about style. That's where I truly got a lot of my Black experiences from, right there in that area. So for me to grow up in this area and still know that that restaurant's there, to be able to drive through it, to see that it's standing more than the time. Nowadays, if you get a restaurant open, 3-5 years at the most. Anything after 13 years is an institution. It'll never go away. You'll never be able to take that away from it. You can't take that away from the community. And Ben's Chili Bowl has and always will be that. And it's been a big part to my culinary career. So I want to thank you for that. But I've always had the wildest of questions of like, why, who, how, and why so long?
Why so long? Well, I tell you, I love people. And one way of meeting people from all walks of life and having the pleasure to serve them is a restaurant. And our little Chili Bowl became the gathering place very early on in our lives. When my husband and I fell in love and wanted to be married, we did get married, and when his first question was, would you be willing to partner with me in a little restaurant? Well, he had worked his way through college by working in restaurants. So he knew a little bit more about it than I did. And I thought, I learned working in the bank that I enjoyed people, interacting with people, different people all day long, was something that was just fun for me. So when he said a restaurant, I'm thinking more people for me to enjoy. And we opened Ben's Chili Bowl in 1958, which was still a segregated city. That was a very prominent, classy, very proud, self-supported black community at the time. We had, and I say back, self-supported because we did have everything we needed there. We had our own hospital, we had our own bank, we had our own, what we call Black Broadway. U Street was known as Black Broadway. That was really named by Pearl Bailey, I think. But we had 3 theaters in 3 blocks, one next to the Chili Bowl. So when Ben and I decided we'd do this, we'd try to find a place to open a little restaurant, and we thought, if we could get anything on that Black Broadway Avenue, we would be just wonderful. So we walked around, and we looked in other places, but one afternoon or evening when we were walking down the street, the gentleman was standing outside of the building, and we said, we're looking for a place to open a little restaurant. Do you know of anything in the area? He said, take a look at my place. His place had been built as a silent movie theater called the Minnehaha. But a theater had come up next door now on the other side that was a very modern theater, so this one was obsolete. So the owner that purchased it this time had a pool hall there. He was also one of the first African-American detectives in Washington that purchased that property. And we negotiated with him over a period of a week or so, and we were able to lease the property. And I worked at the bank, so I knew the community, and I knew which architect to find and which contractor and which everybody, the electrician, the cabinet maker, the one that did all the work, the counter person. We found that those people within 2 or 3 blocks of the Chili Bowl that serviced us for the duration of their career. And that was very easy to run the business back there. You had these people that were proud to take care of you, that you could call that plumber at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, we've got a leak in the back and the water's running, I'll be right over. So that's how we got it opened. And we knew we wanted to be a part of a community, and I love people, and we made friends easily, and my husband had this fancy chili sauce that I really kind of touched it up a bit. And we were able to get it open on August 22nd, 1958.
Wow.
Well, it was big, and it was colorful. We made it very colorful, and it was readily accepted by the community. And when I think back about that, how easy it was compared to running a business today. But we were able to do that successfully and enjoy it. We were open from 11 o'clock in the morning until 3 a.m.
Wow.
and 4 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights.
Wow.
So we worked hard there. I remember I took care of the daytime. He took care of the evening. We were married 10 years before, had a whole week's vacation together to make sure that this place is going to be okay. And then by this time now, the 60s are here and we're into the civil rights movement. I had the pleasure of sitting with Dr. Martin Luther King in 1963 on several occasions. And that's another story. I don't know.
That was one of the questions that I've always wanted to ask. Like that day, like what was it like? You got up that morning. You put on your pearls. You went like, did you know he was coming in? Do you know where that conversation was going? Like, you know, people don't really have those moments in life. You know what I mean? Like it's a very, especially at that time for what was going on in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
For him to be in your space to talk to you during all the crazy, during everything that was going on. That's like, you know,
it was wonderful.
You know, I've shook in President Obama's hand. That was cool and all, but I mean, I've never, you know, while there's this very important time going on, to be able to sit with one of the front runners of trying to solve this mess, and for you to be giving him a meal at that time and having a conversation with him, like what?
Well, I remember one story very clearly that he told me, and that was he and a few of his comrades, I believe, young John Lewis, Philip Randolph, I think the other one's name was Bayard Ruskin, said they had a meeting with President Kennedy. And at that meeting, they told President Kennedy that they were very concerned about the injustices of black people, and therefore they were going to bring a large number of people here to do a protest march. And he said, President Kennedy said, we really want to help you with that, but we don't think it's a good idea to bring a large group of people here, because if there's an incident, it will set your movement back. And Dr. King said there won't be an incident. There won't be an incident. Well, as you all know, in 1963, August the 28th, he brought 250,000 people here to protest. Ben and I had the pleasure of going down there. We did a lot of walking to get there, but we were able to get there and to be there and to hear that wonderful day, the singing and the speeches, but most importantly, the I Have a Dream speech from him left us inspired and motivated, and we know that change is going to come. Well, change did come. We passed the Civil Rights Bill in 1964, 1 year later. We also passed the Voting Rights Bill in 1965. We're still working on that, but we did pass that bill. So that was an amazing time for me, and he was just a wonderful kind of, you could just see the confidence in him, and in his conversation, you grasp the idea that he loved people and he wanted to help. He wanted to help people. And he was just strong-willed, but he was also very kind and humble. You know, in the confidence, you could just feel like he was so confident with what he wanted to do and how he would go about doing it. But then 5 years later, what happened? He was assassinated. So someone runs into the chili bowl door and yells, Dr. King has been shot. We don't believe that. That can't possibly be true. Our beloved nonviolent leader? I don't think so. Well, of course, then someone else, and finally someone comes up with a transistor radio, and it's true. And people were sobbing openly, very upset. And then later on, I guess, frustration, and then finally, anger. And we tore up our beautiful neighborhood, literally destroyed the community. It was hard to see that, and a curfew had to be put in place. We were the only business that was asked to remain open during those 3 nights of curfew. Scary again. I remember going outside one evening and the tear gas coming into your face. So it was scary, but we were able to hang in there, and we were not touched. We had been there 10 years by that time, and we had a community that thought we were pretty nice people, the community that knew we could help them if we could help them, we did. So they were right out there, and I think that community protected me.
Wow. Yeah. That's an amazing story. Super chilling to hear. Some of the greatest times and kind of where it leads to in that space, especially based around on food and tradition and being open and accepting to the community. Wow. That's sorry that just blew me away for a second. But yes, so buy the book.
Copy of the book, please. Bring us one, please. That's why you're here. You're hearing over and over a few phrases that are important. Community, safe space, historical development. This is a picture of Mrs. Ali over the 325-degree grill in the front window of Ben's Chili Bowl. She's been there since 1958, which means she has seen history go by her front door from 1958 to currently. And this particular biography is told, what you just heard, this biography is told from her vantage point, her eyes through the window, seeing history unfold in front of her. So we're talking about the extraordinary Black Broadway of America. Between 1930 and 1970, Howard University is called the Golden Years. They were the best and the brightest in America. No disrespect to the great Morehouse or Spelman or Fisk or North Carolina Central. No disrespect. But Howard University had produced an extraordinary group of people that they came to U Street. They came to the Chili Bowl. They came to the bank when she was the teller. And then she sees the unfolding of the modern civil rights movement right in front of her. You talked about Dr. King. Dr. King's office was 2 blocks away, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The 1968 Poor People's Campaign was at the corner of 14th and T. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was across the street. So what you had on U Street is this was ground zero for the intellectual development of the modern civil rights movement. She was watching it. Then, of course, Dr. King, and then, of course, the rebellion. And now what you're seeing is what you get from this particular biography is you get this, it really unfolds since the Civil War. You're going to get the DC Black history and culture from her eyes through the window about U Street. That's the vantage point from which the story is told. And I prefer her telling the story than me, so keep going.
Really?
Really.
Okay. So after that period of being closed for the 3 days, having the curfew in place, then we don't know what's going to happen next. We have no idea. It's a very fearful time for all of us. But we noticed that the businesses were not reopening. And of course, we were integrated by this time. But then the businesses didn't reopen. The middle class moved away because now we could move all the way up Northwest Washington. We could even bring our law office down near the courthouse. So it was a different time. And then, about a year and a half, 2 years later, heroin moved in and crack cocaine moved in, and our beautiful community became a big, big ghetto that lasted a very long time. That was very hard to see.
You have to appreciate that U Street was burned down.
Yeah.
If you go to U Street today, just drive down U Street past Ben's Chili Bowl, look at all those new big high-rise buildings. You know what that means? They were all burned down during that period. She's watching this from the window. She's literally watching her beloved community burn down.
Yeah. Howard University opened in 1867. So we had these very highly educated people right there in our community because of segregation, right? So now when we see this place just in drugs, all kinds of drugs and crime going on and taking place in our community, it was heartbreaking. We survived. My dad always drilled into us that you treat everybody the way you want to be treated. And when you do that, you really don't have a problem. And the other thing he taught me was don't give anybody the power to make you angry. So when you live by that and you try to drill that into your team members, that hospitality is important. We want everyone that comes in that door to feel like they're coming into my home, to feel welcome, to know that if there's something we can do to help, we do. My children in later years formed a foundation. We just helped people before that happened, but we were able to take that on. And then finally, what about 1988? 1988, now 68 to 88, the city finally decides, okay, we're going to do something for this poor neighborhood. We're going to build a subway, which had been promised to us many years before. In 1988, when they did the survey, in the immediate vicinity, only 3 businesses had survived. Industrial Bank, Lee's Flower Shop, and Ben's Chili Bowl, all being operated by the second and third generation now. And so that was not enough to support keeping 1 lane of traffic on that wide, beautiful U Street. They just dug up the entire street, 65 feet down, to build a subway. Not 1 car coming past my chili bowl. I had 1 employee during that time, and me. That's it. And we had to close when the sun set because there were no street lights for a long time. So that was very hard. But we did manage to survive. And fortunately, we had been able to purchase our property, so that kind of made it a lot easier, as did the bank and the flower shop. So finally, they opened that in 1991. I had a big old banner put across there. I got a crane to put the big banner across the front of it that said, "We survived Metro." We did. We survived Metro. And then next thing you know, here comes these beautiful tall buildings you referred to. The Ellington apartments up the street. The townhouses couldn't go up fast enough behind us. And this big, beautiful building on the other side, condominiums. A year and a half, 2 years later, 1 unit on the top floor of that building went for $1.1 million.
Wow.
And that's where the drug traffic used to gather every day, that spot. So we were able to hang on and get through all of that. And now when it opened, and we had the big ceremony, and I had my little thing up there, okay, we've got it made now. We've got this new, beautiful, wide road, and cars coming all and going, and we're just great. The pandemic hits. Another whole story on Bernard.
Well, before the pandemic, it was the increase in taxes. So
Oh, yeah.
gentrification really slammed them hard,
Yeah.
where they were paying at one point, and of course all this is in a book, being assessed at 0.5, $500,000. They're now assessed at $1.5 million, which really was very threatening to the business.
Yeah, we did have that tax thing going on. We still have it.
Yeah.
We still pay a lot of taxes, but it is today a very expensive, young, educated community. So I'm kind of impressed with that for one reason. They're young, they're educated, so they're energetic, and I think they're going to make a difference in the world. I can't wait. I'm 90 years old. I'm going to have to live a few more years and see what they do with it.
Well, how do you like when they come into the restaurant, like, you know, in comparison to the guests that came in, in the 60s and the 70s. You see these new, you see the new generation, bright eye and bushy tail type of thing. I'm sure they have on their earbuds and they're just pointing at things to order from the menu. Like, how does, where do you interject that style of hospitality with them now?
I tell them just that. I expect great things from them. I tell them just that. Of course, we had to add in the vegetarian items. We had to bring all the vegetarian items in, right?
Turkey dogs.
Veggie dogs,
Veggie
veggie
dogs.
chili, and all that kind of thing. Yeah, you got to go with the community. But we're still there, and I don't know what else do you guys need to know?
Well, I think what is this word community, chef, keeps cropping up. Dr. King, his vision was a beloved community. You go to Ben's any Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you will see the beloved community by Dr. King. You will see people from all over the world, different colors, different ethnics, different religions, different sexual orientation, rich and poor, members of Congress and homeless people. Everybody is there. And to your point, Chef, this is a safe place, and it's a happy place. People know that when you walk in the front door and that jukebox is blaring old soul food. By the way, we're the only remaining jukebox on U Street. One of the few remaining jukeboxes in the nation's capital. But when they walk in and they smell that aroma and they hear that sizzle from the grill, they hear that soul food, and then they look around and they say, who are all these people? Where do they come from? Korea, North Carolina, China, Africa, they're everywhere. And so what Mrs. Ali does is she walks down the aisle and she talks to every single person in the chili bowl, and she says, so, thank you for coming, and where are you from? And they say, Korea, and this happens all the time. This is like normal. And because I follow behind her, and I'm taking notes, and they say, she says, Korea. Well, what brings you to Washington, D.C.? And they always say the same thing, no matter where they're from. Well, we wanted to see the White House, the Capitol, the mall, and go to Ben's Chili Bowl.
I do hear a lot of that.
It's true.
I do hear a lot of that. I feel so blessed that I've had the privilege of serving people from all walks of life, presidents and judges and any profession you can name, and heroin addicts and crackheads and bums. But you got to treat everybody the way you want to be treated, and you can stay in business for 65 years. I really believe that. Okay, but we are now on the map. I'm not sure how we got there. There are people coming from all over the world, as Bernard just said. And I'm just grateful and feel very blessed. We had 3 sons that joined us in the business. We sent them off to the big schools. One is a lawyer. They all work for Ben's. They've opened up a few other Ben's. I have 2 daughter-in-laws with me. There's one sitting right there that runs everything, takes care of everything. She's doing a great job. So I'm definitely very, very blessed. And I've enjoyed the experience so much. When I look back at what I've been able to, the people I've been able to meet from all walks of life and all over the world, just wonderful.
Chef, you mentioned 5 years, small businesses fold. 13 years, you become iconic. We're 65 years now, and what people appreciate is the resilience. Now, in an African American community, resilience is an absolute essential to survive. We know that, but this business survived some very, very difficult moments. And people appreciate the resilience, they appreciate the kindness, and they appreciate the fact that when you walk through the door, you're being loved. And that's not an overuse of the word. And let me just say one, I want to put in context. Before 68, Dr. King's rebellion, there were over 200 African-American businesses up and down the U Street corridor. There was only 5 remaining today. Ben's, Lee's Forest Shop, Industrial Bank, the Black Masons at 10th and U, and Howard Theater at 7th and T. Only 5 remain.
That's true.
And that just shows to the true
And don't
test.
we have a pretty good chili house, Mom?
Oh yeah, no, trust me, I've done riffs on
You're the chef. You're
your
the
house
chef.
smoke in many places. I've been asked to make them at various places, but it goes to show you, like you said, the resilience of a business. At the same time, for folks to understand what that experience is, or want to come and have that experience, right? It's the full show. So you go to a place like Ben's Chili Bowl, you get the experience, you get the rich history, you get the touch, you get the feel, you get to be in that same seat as Dr. King was. You get to be in that same place that all walks of life have been able to walk through, and actually may even had a beginning there, right? You talk about segregation, you talk about those times, people were escaping a lot of things, and sometimes a small table in a small place where you feel welcome was just the beginning for you, and especially in that neighborhood. I mean, for me, sitting at those tables, like it's very historic. There's what you could imagine being a fly on that wall during those times, and hearing and seeing, like, you wouldn't expect it, to this day, being in that place. So you're able to still have, as much as things get shaken up in the city, true DC history, and still be able to actually go there, feel it, touch it, see the vibe, like, do all those things. So, like you said, there's not too many places in DC that are black owned. There's not too many places in DC that still are DC.
And I hear all these wonderful things, Bernard, but I think it's just my little hot dog place all the time. That's all it is to me.
Ben's Chili Bowl is an organization of community building disguised as the hot dog joint. But Chef, you're right. The half smoke and the chili dog, they're good. And the chili is good. I'm part of the family, we won the Golden Spatula Award with Steve Harvey in Cincinnati in the best chili cook-off. Now, Cincinnati is chili capital of the world. I mean, great chili. And a blind tasting, 300 people, we won. And quite honestly, our food is good. It's good. Thank you. And I see some of you have already started.
So I have one question also. There's always been talks about where the half smoke came from. When you guys originally started selling half smokes and stuff like that, were there dealings with another family in Baltimore? Were you ordering from there or no?
No, we did not order them from Baltimore.
There's always been that weird conversation about.
It's our recipe. It's our recipe, and it didn't come from Baltimore. Not in 1958.
Are you?
We make the chili. We made the chili. When we opened, we had this one space, and we had the grill, and beside the grill were these burners, and all day long we were cooking chili while we were selling the hot dogs.
Well, I asked that. I went to culinary school in Pittsburgh, and my roommates were all from Baltimore, and Baltimore folks they're a different set of folks from DC folks, and it's either somebody's taking something from somebody or somebody's doing this and doing that. It's, oh no, we've been making half smokes in Baltimore, and they say it with the Baltimore accent. It's like no. It's the same thing that we have with our mumbo sauce and my friends in Chicago that want to give me this whole Rick and run around and stuff like that. It's just like no, man. These are DC things. These are true things from this place.
Baltimore is an Eastern European ethnic city. So the Ukrainians, the Czechs, the Polish people like me, we've been making kielbasa and sausages forever. That's why we pride ourselves in Baltimore as being the best. But no, she makes her own. She knows what to do.
What? Anybody got a question? You good?
I think she's gonna open up for questions.
Yes, I'm going to prompt a question and go as the historian speaking to the historian. Give us some more background on U Street, particularly those contraband camps and some of those other historic sites that Mrs. Ali would have watched be developed over those years. Not the contraband camp, but some of the things that came a little bit later. Can you center that history on U Street and the impact on or the development of the black community?
I love that question because this series is Emancipation Day series. Emancipation Day in Washington, D.C., April 16th, 1862. On April 17th, 1862, 40,000 black people ran out of slavery in Maryland, Virginia, and D.C., and Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. They run into D.C., and they become free. But where do they go? They go to these contraband camps. Contraband because they stole their body from their master's ownership. And there were camps. They were in Fort Reno, they were in Foggy Bottom, and they were in the U Street corridor area, particularly 12th and R. What Dr. Thompson is referring to here is that Camp Barker was all along that corridor. U Street was not U Street, it was called Boundary Road. It was the north boundary of the city of Washington. And those camps existed all up and down around the U Street corridor. And after emancipation, most of them were then moved over to Anacostia and Berry Farm. General Oliver Otis Howard bought 375 acres of land in 1868, and those people then built their own community over there. But those left behind began to build shacks in that area. That becomes the beginning, and it's a result of D.C. Emancipation Day. Starting early in 1867 on Franklin Square, black people are parading every year on Emancipation Day for their as respecting their freedom. Then in 1876, we had the Lincoln Memorial built in Lincoln Park that was dedicated by Frederick Douglass. So there has been this long history of celebrating Emancipation Day in the city and also on U Street. And the last point that Dr. Thompson I'll make here on this question is that the African American Civil War Memorial Museum is at 10th and U. Those are the soldiers that fought in the Civil War, and those are the people that ran out of slavery and joined the Union Army. The reason the memorial is there is because that's where the contraband camp was. So we go back, and when you read the book, you'll see I really go back to try and understand all of this history, to understand where U Street and where Mrs. Ali and Ben's Chili Bowl comes from. And it comes from this long, glorious history. History made Mrs. Ali and Ben's, and then Mrs. Ali and Ben's turn around and they make history themselves. It's a dialectical relationship. Does that help?
That does.
Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone would like to comment? Or Sharita,
Hi, thank you. Honored to be here. I'm just curious about the name, Ben's Chili Bowl, because you're a co-founder of it, and I'm just curious how you came up with that. Why your name isn't part of that. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's called Ben's Chili Bowl because it was Ben's idea. It was Ben's idea to open up a little restaurant, and we thought Ben's Chili Bowl would be just fine. I didn't really need my name there, so that's why I've got it. And it's worked out very well. Thank you.
Chef, she had a very good job down at the bank from 52 to 58. And then she was going to take the plunge to open up a restaurant. That was quite a brave moment on her part. And we talk about that in the book because that's scary. Yeah. She had a good job. But
well,
also,
I did ask my husband that he think I should leave my job, or maybe I could just work part-time for a little while until we're sure it's going to make it. He said, no. We will make this work if we have to give up the apartment and come down here and build a bathroom, build a shower, and bring in a bed and get rid of the car, and we'll just live here. Well, we didn't have to do that, but we were willing to do that to make this chili bowl work.
Definitely, it's being an entrepreneur even now and in those times. We were talking about it earlier. When are we going to open up Mahal Barbecue, our brick and mortar? It's like my wife really wants to do it. And I'm like, you must be crazy, woman, all the stuff that you go through opening up a restaurant and stuff like that. You see the glamorous side about it, but, you don't see the hard work that goes behind it. Like we said, Ben's Chili Bowl, 60 plus years. And that's just hard work, dedication, being a part of the community, and always being available. That's the other part of it. No matter what, always being available, and the energy that you put out definitely comes back in. And that's the true reason I believe why we've stand the test of time, and are one of those iconic places throughout America that there's a handful of restaurants and restaurant spaces that people talk about in America, and Ben's Chili Bowl is one of the most recognizable ones.
May I make a plug for the book? Would that be okay? The book is out there, and it is $24.90. Why is it 90 cents? Why not 95? Why not 99? Because we made sure that we produced the book and finished it on her 90th birthday, December 17th, 2023. That's why it's 90 cents.
Well, in terms of that plug, Bernie, then why now? Why did you all decide to sit down and write this book now?
Wasn't my idea again.
Some wise person once said, the only thing permanent in our lives is change. And this change has been going on. She's been watching it for over 70 years in Washington, D.C. She's been seeing it change. And I thought it was really important to get it on the record, get in black and white in print, get it particularly prepared for her 90th birthday, but also to record the extraordinary changes that occurred in Washington, D.C., and particularly on U Street. How U Street was a driver of change in our nation's capital. So when you got great civil rights organizations like SNCC and SCLC and NAACP, they're all in that neighborhood. And those leaders are coming to Ben's. And so you want to be able to capture that. We definitely wanted to capture it for her 90th birthday, but we also wanted to capture that we got to get it down on paper now. Somebody asked me, Dr. Thompson, how long did it take you to write the book? It took me 2 years on the keyboard, but it took me 46 years sitting in Ben's watching Mrs. Ali. Literally, 43 years. I have a little corner. You all come to Ben's, there's a little corner. It's got my name in the corner. I've been sitting there for 43 years watching her. I had to write this book. If I didn't write this book, I couldn't sleep at night. And we had to make it sure that the world knew this story. It's a good story. It's a story of uplift. It's a good story.
So, Dr. Demczuk, elaborate on your history with Ben's Chili Bowl.
Oh, well, okay. So in 1967, I was at the University of Maryland, 20 years old, and would come down often to U Street with my friends, go to Howard Theater, because Howard Theater was the place to go. Soul review, doo-wop review, then eventually funk, and et cetera, And so after, going to the Howard Theater at 11 o'clock at night, what do young people do? They're hungry. And so we walked down U Street, and all of a sudden, there it was, in that big, beautiful, bright lights with those big yellow and red, and everybody's going in, and you can see the grill sizzling from the street, and it was just like a magnet. It was like we all went there. Everybody went there. That was a thing to do. However, Sharita, I was involved in the freedom movement, the liberation movement, black liberation movement in the 60s, and this was the corridor. This was the Black Liberation Corridor. And so it was an exciting time. It was very heady. You really felt you were making a change in America. And we did, of course. So I think my history was I started going there in 67, but then really in 1981, I would be sitting in that same corner with Marion Barry and a bunch of others. I worked with Marion Barry for many, many years. And that was our corner. And we all sat there. Why did we sit there? We sat there because across from us was a jukebox, and because we could see everybody coming in and everybody going out. We could see and be seen. And I began to realize that Marion Barry understood very clearly where to position himself. He knew exactly where to sit in order to touch everybody. And I learned that from Marion Barry. Starting in 1981, I put myself in that corner and I never left. I'm still there today. Does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. With all the new construction, new apartment buildings, new people coming in, I recall a couple of years ago, there was a real pushback on the go-go music. You know, they were happy to be in the neighborhood, but people didn't want to hear the go-go music. They were happy to deal with the noise coming from the new clubs. But again, there were the demonstrations to say, basically say, our neighborhood is go-go, you know. So you had this sense of maybe the contention and I hope accommodation that followed that. But do you see, Mrs. Ali, a sense of a neighborliness that has come out of that? Is there a different sense of community or a new community that you hope will continue? Or do you still see some contention between new neighbors and the old community?
Now, talk about the real DC, Go-Go and Benz, and the video we did. Talk about that, because that's what we've done.
I think when you're kind to people and you make them feel welcome when they walk in that door, you can build friendships anywhere you go. I do believe that. My children, my sons that work with me now, created a little song, go-go music. You know, we had the father of go-go, Chuck Brown, some years ago, and it's a kind of a music that you can't sit still. You got to move your feet or do something to feel the rhythm. And so they wrote this song, and it's called "The Real DC is Go-Go and Benz." And because of new people coming in, particularly some that have been there for a little while, didn't want to hear all that loud music. So the song also says, "Don't mute DC." So it's a cute song, and Peter can tell you how to find it on YouTube or someplace.
Just go to YouTube and Google up YouTube, The Real DC, Go-Go and Benz. It was written by her two sons,
Right.
Nizam Ali and Kemal Ali. It's actually a very good song. But what it does is it celebrates who we are in DC. So somebody tried to mute us, and of course that led to a rebellion that only highlighted the music. And then the mayor, in her wisdom, made sure that Go-Go was the official DC music. And thank you for that question, because we couldn't be Benz if we weren't. I mean, Chuck Brown, Little Benny, and EU and Sugar Bear, they've always been at Benz. Benz was the welcoming place for them and their music. So Vida Ali here, I mean, she puts together go-go bands constantly to celebrate various episodes at Ben's Chili Bowl, and we usually try to put the music out on the sidewalk, and then we take one lane and then two lanes, and the police come and go, "Oh my God, these people keep coming," so they shut the street down because of go-go music and because they're at Ben's.
I don't have a question, but I just want you to know that I do volunteer work over at Martha's Table, and there's a lot of buses that come. There are a lot of young people from all over the place, from all over the United States and the world. I remember last summer we had a busload from Ireland, and you ask them, "Where are you going?" And they say, "Oh, we're going to go see the White House, we're going to go see the Washington Monument, and we're going to Ben's Chili Bowl for dinner." There are so many, each of the groups, they all are going to Ben's. I just want you to know. It's like they go to Ben's and they go to Martha's then. So yeah, thank you so much. They love it. They just love it. And thank you, Virginia, for all you did for DC and you're doing. We love you.
Thank you, thank you.
We have another question. Hold tight. I'm coming.
It's coming. Mike's coming.
Could you talk about the people of note who've come through Ben's Chili Bowl over the years, and pick a couple who you would highlight?
Who are the famous people that have come into Ben's?
Who are the famous people? They're all famous to me.
See, there you go. That's
Who
it.
are the famous people? I don't know. I had a little girl in there a few months ago, and with her mom and her little sister, and she looked at me. She seemed to be about 11 years old, and she said, "Are you Virginia Alley?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I would like to interview you." And she had her little phone, and I said, "Okay." So I took her aside, and she asked me these very intelligent questions. And then the last question was, "So who's your favorite person that's been in here all these years? Who's impressed you the most?" I said, "You, my dear, you." And I really meant that. So, yeah.
Have you been to Ben's? So we just walk on through slowly, all 3 rooms, and just look at the walls, and they're all there. Yeah.
We have a question over here.
Not so much a question. Hi, Mama Ali. And I call her Mama Ali because I've known her since I was a little girl. Coming into Ben's Chili Bowl, my grandfather had a barber shop on U Street, which I don't know if many people knew that the neighborhood was called Lee George Park. That's where the affluent African Americans, all the way up to Georgetown. But I'm just so glad to see you. And she does toe us to the line, because I went to school with Kamal and her sons, and trust me, are you doing your work? No goofing off. Do your work, then you can play. So I love you, Mama Ali.
Thank you, thank you.
It sounds like you work all the time. What do you do for fun? What would you recommend if people were visiting DC, you would want them to see? Restaurants, other restaurants to go to? Do you actually?
What do you do for fun other than work at Ben's?
That's not work, it's enjoying people. I enjoy people so much. When I wake up in the morning, I lost my husband in 2009 after 51 years together. And when I wake up in the morning and I'm not feeling my best, just take a quick shower, throw on some clothes, and walk into Ben's Chili Bowl. And I'm feeling fine in another 30 minutes, so I enjoy the people. There's some amazing people out here in the world, and I get to meet a bunch of them, so that's my fun, really. I do read a lot. I enjoy reading, and my husband and I had the privilege of traveling a great deal after we worked many, 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 many years. But our first son joined us, and then the second one joined us, and then they all joined us. We were able to take our time and get to see a little bit of the world.
Ben's is family, food, friends, and fun.
Yes.
And so what does she have to do other than just go there, right?
Has anyone ever approached you and said, would you consider a franchise?
Yes, that's a better question. They're working on it. My daughter-in-law is here. She's the one she and my sons are working on that as we speak.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
I might apply.
So, point of privilege, I'm going to ask the last question as we wrap up. Mrs. Ali, how do you feel with your life being in that book now? How did you feel with this project after it was all said and done?
Well, I kept saying I don't need a book. I haven't done anything but be gracious and kind to people. I don't know why that deserves a book. But I'm enjoying it, and Bernard put his best effort into it. It's a lot of history, and people are interested in history, right? So here I am.
And we are so happy that you're here. So can we give our guests a round of applause and thanking them
so
for
much.
coming here today? This was fabulous. The book is outside. We're going to have a signing outside of the book. So if you purchased one, please stick around and get it signed. If you haven't purchased your book, go ahead and purchase it so we can get it signed for you. And thank our guests. You all were great, and the conversation was great, and we learned a lot about D.C. through the eyes of Miss Virginia Ali and the window in front of the grill.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all.
Thank you all for coming, everybody. Thank you.